Welcome to episode 39 of Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Tom Flynn
and Chris Baker, a podcast where we take your favorite series seriously. Tom, you texted me last night while you were reading these issues, getting ready for recording, and you said, and I quote, "Are you fucking kidding me with these?"
Did I ever? Chris, we were through the rough patch with Mantlo, and then we're back in the rough patch. I feel like I was put through sandpaper. It wasn't good. It wasn't fun. It wasn't a good experience. These three issues all follow one another. Like, they're clearly things that are happening to these characters, and yet they somehow manage to pretend to be a totally different book.
I think what you're describing is exactly what gives Alpha Flight the reputation that we all understand it has without us going into. That, like, yeah, these things happen, but there's something seems missing here. There's character development and there's things happening, but those two things don't interact.
It actually makes more sense, frankly, to have every issue start with a download of who's who and how they got here, because you could be forgiven for thinking you're reading a brand new book every single time. Like,
yeah, about.
We remarked in the past that there are storylines that could have done with 6 extra pages or an entire issue to fill in what's going on with some of these characters, why they're making the choices they are. This is that on a completely different scale. We go from picking up in their new Arctic base to continuing sort of the new Arctic base, but it almost feels like you're in a different location, to being on a fucking spaceship over the course of 3 issues. It doesn't help that the first issue we're covering isn't drawn by Jim Lee, so there's also that dissonance that's going on there. Man, this is one of the roughest spots we've come across as far as a sequence of issues. And one thing I just want to throw out there is like a thing that flashed through my head as I was reading them last night is, have you ever read Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler?
It's on my nightstand, but no, I haven't picked it up yet.
So the way that book is structured is every chapter is actually the start to a different novel. But then there's the in-between connective part that is like 2 people interacting. And I mean, functionally, it's the way I've always conceived of that novel, because it's brilliant, is it's a love story. It's how stories can start in different ways and still lead to the same connectivity and all that. This is the the false starts of a new novel every time, with none of the connective tissue that pulls it together and makes it remotely comprehensible. So there's your literary reference for the episode, but my God, man. My God.
Yeah, it's been something, you know? Well, before we find out where we're going, let's find out where we've been with the story so far.
Alpha Flight, Canada's premier superhero team, is nominally under the control of the Canadian government's shadowy Department H. They mostly mop up their own messes and fight amongst themselves. Department H doesn't seem to have to get involved too terribly often. I guess there's not a lot of supervillainy going on in Canada at the moment. They have to stop.
After an interminable amount of dithering, Alpha Flight team leader, the totally human Heather Hudson, aka Vindicator, has accepted her own leadership abilities and come to grips with the responsibilities. You might have guessed it from having 7 siblings, but the McNeil family is canonically Catholic. I propose Heather be called Our Lady of Perpetual Self-Doubt.
She has also killed several people, including at least 2 friends.
Now, Tom, check me out here. Okay, Snowbird, Roger Box, Lionel, Bedlam, there must be, I feel like there are other on-panel kills. Well, and several other attempts.
She didn't kill Lionel. That was Box. That was Jeffries.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Look, he's tasted blood as well.
She's got enough red on her ledger.
I knew you were going to do it.
But yes, we should start keeping track of that and maybe make a little sound cue every time she takes someone else out.
A giggle.
A giggle. She's also watched her husband, team founder James McDonald Hudson, aka Guardian, aka JMH, spontaneously combust in front of her, which I think is perhaps overstating it. He definitely didn't spontaneously combust.
He flung himself 10,000 years into the past, into Jupiter.
But none of that phases Heather. Just her own thoughts about whether she can live up to the demands placed upon her, not all the death that has crackled from her power suit gauntlet.
Yeah, you like that? I like that. She's begun a carefree romance with fellow Alphan Mr. Madison Jeffries, a mutant who can transmutate technology to his will. He took over the Box armor designed by his best friend Roger Box. Once Box, Tom, the script says Tom make a wrestling reference. What is the proper wrestling term for what Box did to Madison and the team?
I guess we could keep it Canadian and say it was something akin to the Montreal screw job, but he just did a hard heel turn. The proper
heel turn.
Proper term here is a hard heel turn.
Filling out the trio is our friend, secret agent linebacker, superhero Dr. Walter Lankowski, a.k.a. Sasquatch, who is back from the dead, this time white and with a female human body. I mean, the Sasquatch is white. Walt has always been so white, he looks like he can give Pat Boone singing lessons, but I guess the female body here is white as well.
When not in Sasquatch form, she is currently using the name Wanda, given to her by Mr. Jeffries, if memory serves. And
weird.
And the gender of the Sasquatch form has not been discussed on page yet, which I don't think matters. It's actually a great beast, but Chris wants to bring it up, so here we are. This version looks pretty much identical to the orange Sas, but, as stated, white fur. Though, it seems smaller a lot of the time.
You're right. Like, originally, Sasquatch was what is that thing big, you know?
I wonder if that's because of Box's presence in the panels. We didn't always have Box as side-by-side with Sas in the past, but it could also just be that's not Byrne drawing it. You know what? I take a lot of that back. On reflection, this Sas is considerably less wide than the original Sas. That was one of the things about Sasquatch when we first encountered it.
Yeah.
It was as wide as it was tall, and it was really goddamn tall. So, maybe Chris has a point.
Maybe Sasquatches don't have sexual dimorphism.
Maybe great beasts don't have sexual dimorphism.
Strangely, this comes up next episode.
Unfucking believable. Also taking up...
hold on. I want to go back to one thing. Mr. Jeffries sees Walt come back and Walt turn into a chick, and he says, I'm going to call you Wanda. Tom, if you came back from the dead and you turned into a woman after your Sasquatch form, and I looked at you and said, I'm going to call you Sally, it would not have just been taken up by everybody, including yourself, with zero comment.
It's kind of fucked up. Like, it really is fucked up to, like, just assign a name to Wanda. I mean, it's weird. It's a weird choice, and it's a weird choice by everyone. And it's an even weirder choice by the person to just sort of roll with it and not be like, hey, fuck you, I'll pick my own name.
Yeah, I think that the Walt Wanda stuff, the thing that keeps me from really engaging with this is that nobody treats this like Walt in a new body. They treat this like a new character, and that feels weird to me because they all knew Walt. I mean, most of them knew Walt. And they don't treat Wanda like Walt unless she's in the Sas form. And then it's just Sasquatch that we can rely on. But when she turns human and everybody calls her Wanda and treats her like a new person, and again, some of that connective tissue just doesn't feel like it's here. I don't know if we're supposed to treat this like Walt in a different body, or if we're supposed to treat this as a new character called Wanda that is somehow come out of Walt like a phoenix. And that's the unclarity here that to his credit, Mantlo is going to try to get into in a little bit, but it doesn't tell us what kind of story we're getting here. Is this a body swap story? Is this a Phoenix story? What is this story? And it's just kind of playing along, and yet it feels like it's trying to funnel us over toward the Phoenix, but then it hard goes body swap later. It's a mess, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're really getting at is that it's frankly poorly written. Like, I mean, that's where, I mean, honestly, like, I don't, look...
Not poorly conceived, poorly...
Well, maybe even poorly
displayed.
conceived. Like, the execution on this is unclear. I don't know that the other characters are treating this as a brand new person. I mean, they certainly are interacting. And I mean, I guess your point about the Sasquatch form versus the human form, when Sas makes the whole... As Sasquatch makes the whole point of Heather's abilities as a leader and this version of Alpha Flight versus the other one. Yeah, I mean, that in some ways, maybe that's easier for Heather to listen to because it's coming from a Sasquatch, which is an absolutely insane thing to say out loud, but here we are. But when Heather is interacting with Wanda, I don't feel like she's treating Wanda as a brand new person. I think she's I think there is an element of trying to negotiate what this means and what this means for Wanda, but it's just not. It's not given sufficient room to breathe. And in these issues, there is a little bit more.
Yeah, I was going to say, we do get to address that. We're talking about where we've been as the story so far.
But even just.
But it continues on. So don't worry. It does continue on. This is why it's one of the most memorable arcs in Alpha Flight.
Also taking up space in this book is the nascent Beta Flight, currently made up of little Kara Kilgrave, 13 years old, aka the Purple Girl, and Dr. Whitman, you know better than that, son, Nap, who chose the superhero name Mannequin with a K. They are embarking upon an ill-advised and frankly unpleasant to read, age-inappropriate romance.
When we left off with the main book in episode 37, Alpha Flight had just cleaned up a mess made by Department H liaison Gary Cody, which was actually a mess left behind by JMH when he tried to science a convicted murderer into a super being calling itself Bedlam. Once released by Cody, Bedlam sought revenge on JMH and blew up Alpha Flight's Tamarind Island mansion.
He manipulated Alpha Flight into fighting another group of innocent people given superpowers who've been mind-twisted by Bedlam. They all died. Well, all but one.
Alpha Flight is now squatting inside Bedlam's enormous Arctic base and unsure of their future with Department H.
It has been a rough couple of weeks for Canada's premier superhero team.
It has been a rough existence for Canada's premier superhero team. The team-ups and sex have been fun, but they come with the death and failure part, Tom.
Kicking us off today, we have issue number 54, titled Goblyn, with a Y and an exclamation point. Cover date, January 1988. Script
January 1988, the dawn of a new era. Good Lord. Sorry, just having a moment. How many times can I cut you off?
Script by Bill Mantlo. Pencils by Hugh Haynes. Inks by Wills Portacio. Letters by Janice Chung. Colors by Gregory Wright. Edited by Carl Potts, with Tom DeFalco as editor in Sleet. Yeah.
Well, it's January. There's sleet.
Yeah.
Also, I think that we should always pronounce the name Gregory as Dredgery now. On the cover, we have a lot of purple once again, and not just because the Purple Girl is the only conscious Alphan on the page. She stands shocked over the prone bodies of Sasquatch, Box, and Vindicator, and a man in a lab coat, I guess that's Whitman, but colored with brown hair and looking his age instead of being drawn like a less gangly Sam Guthrie in New Mutants. Skittering away is a small, inky, black, cloven-hoofed, alien-headed thing with really long arms and talons. This is the titular Goblin, though what we saw of her last issue looks nothing like what's on this cover. This cover is credited to Kevin Nolan again, for what it's worth.
To refresh, among the Derangers last issue, that was the team that Bedlam assembled to fight Alpha Flight, when we had the cool panel of everyone mind melding, there was a young black girl given the name of Goblyn. Her story in the 5 panels is much more cryptic than the rest of the characters and frankly pretty obtuse. Both in the story and in the fight, the young black girl seems to turn into this black talon goblin creature through some energy portal.
This is another cover I feel like I see in stores more than others. Something about this late Mantlo era keeps them in the boxes, I guess. I guess we're finding out why. We pick up exactly where last issue left off, with Alpha Flight standing over the decapitated and presumably still cooling bodies of Bedlam and the Deranger Freakout, and another body that is presumably the Deranger Breakdown, who Marvel.fandom.com informs me died in that fight, but it was not clear on page, people.
As the silence settled following yet another murder by Heather, Goblyn slashed at a window and dove out into the Arctic to get away from the other people. She's skittish and animalistic, and that's what we know about Goblyn so far.
Hope you want to know more about her, because it's all Goblyn all the time for the next 2 episodes. Not issues. Episodes, Tom.
Splash page open to Goblyn shivering in the snow, looking back at the base Bedlam brain blasted. Every time I hear that, woof. Into existence, and Alpha Flight has now claimed as her own because, as we always say, you keep what you kill.
There are narration boxes that are somehow from Goblin's point of view, but also in the third person. This device allows us to recap what's been going on for the new reader, but it also drops some important breadcrumbs to what Goblin is all about. So, Goblin's going to be around, but Goblin and Laura are both going to have separate voices, so I'm not ready to commit to a voice for Goblin yet, unless you've got an idea. She doesn't talk a lot.
I mean, does she always talk in the third person like this?
No,
Right,
I
so
don't
this
think
is just
Goblin ever speaks. Yeah, this is just narration.
Yeah.
All right. Narrate.
What had drawn her out into this dead world? Ah, now she remembers. Her twin, her terrified, trembling twin, caught the attention of one of the Alphans. the purple one. Laura fled to Live World, calling Goblin back. Goblin fought, and the battle won. Goblin fled. And now Goblin freezes. This is how Goblin remembers Dead World. Pain, unending pain. Goblin would go back to Live World if she could, but she can't. Laura would die were Goblin to trade places with her now, and Laura must live. Goblin owes her that. Therefore, Goblin must take Laura inside.
And the scene shifts to Alpha Flight inside the base. But before we go, Tom, how did you feel about that opening?
I actually didn't hate it. Like you're establishing a new character. You're making it very unclear what's going on here because it's unclear. Obviously, there are powers involved. Obviously, there's some sort of exchange of bodies, which is not unusual for Alpha Flight at this point,
Yeah.
So I think it gave some interesting stakes. I also kind of established a little bit of the alienness of Goblin, which I think is appropriate. So I didn't look. When Mantlo goes hard into some of this narration stuff, it's not bad. It just
doesn't serve a purpose.
I mean, I don't even know if it doesn't serve
build something,
Frankly, I feel like some of these books might have been better if they were just straight prose. Like if he could just simply like blurg onto the page everything he's thinking, he's trying to set up and create the narrative that way. But there's something about whether he's not giving good enough direction of what he wants or he just runs out of room. I don't know, but there's something about there's a real disconnect between Mantlo's words or his thoughts is probably a better way of putting it, and the images that hit the page, I find.
That's a very good way of putting it, and you have shed new light on this subject. I value your friendship and what you bring to my life, Tom.
Thanks, Chris. I do appreciate that. Meanwhile, our heroes are back in the base, quickly patching up holes in the walls to keep out the Arctic cold. And engaging in several pages of recap on their personal stories and how they came to be an Alpha Flight, because it's been so long since the last issue a month ago.
Sasquatch is surprisingly anti being involved with Department H after the way Gary Cody spied on them and led to the destruction of Mansion Alpha. To be fair, it was his mansion, or her mansion, so actually, legally it was Walt's mansion. That's going to come up later. In fact, when it was destroyed, Wanda said at the time, "There goes my inheritance," but we didn't mention it at the time in the show because it didn't flow.
It's sweet that Wanda values the place, but it ain't hers anymore. The Canadian government done eminent domain that shit right away from the Lankowski family. So, I don't know if it's that surprising that Sasquatch is so anti being involved with Department H at this point. I mean, we get a bit more of it in the next issue we cover today, but Wanda is going fucking through it. I feel like her dealing with other people's shit tank is pretty well topped off.
Well, even in the annual, when Department H came to them and said, "Hey, we want you to go do this," and she's just like, "Why? They're already dead. You don't want us to do superhero stuff. You want us to do government stuff. And that's not really what I want to be doing these days."
Yep.
Little Kara Gilgrave, 13 years old, says to Heather, "You know what, Tom? This conversation passes the Bechdel test, so we get to do some voice work.
We've got to take a risk and rescue Goblin."
Heather replies, "What? That creature was the deadliest of all the derangers." Kara replies,
"Yeah, that's why she survived and helped save us. We can't leave without her. That would be murder."
Kara clearly hasn't figured out who she's talking to yet. Murder is absolutely not out of the question when Heather's making the call.
Not only is it not out of the question, it's in the top 2 proposed answers. Every time. The team hears a horrible howling from outside, presumably Goblin, and give in to their better angels and choose not to murder. I mean, I think the rest of the team does that. I don't know that.
Heather just pauses.
Heather just goes with the flow because everyone else is doing it. And, does she need to kill the rest of her team to get her way? She doesn't really want to do that yet.
She'll need them later. That means they get to choose the murder the next time with like a completely clean conscience. It's like eating a salad before you go out with friends. Totally offsets the bratwurst curry from the bar later that night. By the way, folks, I do not recommend bratwurst curry, especially when sharing a hotel room with your best friend.
I think it might have been the drinks that were the bigger problem, but that bartender was the best.
Oh, dude, Smalls was the best. The adults, having made the Arctic base temporarily habitable, head out to save the small, sharp creature that clearly doesn't want to be around them, yet appreciates warmth and food. I'm saying, Goblin is the stray cat your weird friends in a polycule took in when they were homeless. Where's the lie?
Box transforms himself into a super cool treaded snow machine, though I do confess keeping his face as the front end of it makes it look a bit phallic.
You might think it's weird to say, but folks, look at page 8. Do it, now. Am I reaching here? No, I am not reaching here. That looks weird.
He does this all the time, too. It's...
If there was an HR department for Alpha Flight...
Oh my God, they would quit. They would, the first day they would quit. They would take one look at Kara and Whitman and be like, nope, out, done.
And they set out to find their feral buddy. Not a real buddy yet, but she will be by the end of this arc. Kind of.
Back inside the base, Beta Flight has been left alone to do what they do when they're left alone. I am in hell.
Should we have a music cue of like some silly porn music? Like maybe the song for the poker game fight scene in Boondock Saints that hand to God I once heard in a porn?
So we're just going to leave that suggestion in there in lieu of any music because I think...
Damn it, Tom!
I think it's far funnier than actually dropping the music in.
Fine.
Out in the snow, Sasquatch closes in on Goblin's location, only to be ambushed from below, kind of like how Sasquatch beat the Super Skrull back in the day.
I wonder if in his old age, if he reaches old age, and is a he then, Walt ever declares, I beat up the Super Skrull, like Will Ferrell saying, I drive a Dodge Stratus! So Goblin swipes at Sass's eyes and blinds her.
Vindicator flies over to Sass and finds... Laura Dean, Goblin's, quote, alter ego, end quote, lying in a t-shirt in the snow. Heather thinks she's either freezing or frozen. I should let her... Jesus. Then she thinks about Kara saying...
That would be murder.
Heather says, blast, out of the mouths of babes.
She had to be talked out of murder.
What in the actual...
She had to be talked out of murdering like a 9-year-old girl.
Oh my God.
This is the second episode in the row where Heather had to be convinced not to just kill the child. As she reaches for Laura in a blast of light, Goblin appears and slashes the shit out of Heather's stomach, cutting right through her supersuit technomesh and leaving her bleeding in the snow.
Good.
Hey, maybe Heather was right, you know?
No.
She's bleeding out in the snow now.
Next up on the slice and dice docket is Box, who finds Goblin shivering in the cold and offers a ride inside a presumably heated dome he constructs out of his body. Once inside the base, Goblin slices out of the dome, which physically hurts Madison Jeffries and forces him out of the armor and out of the fight. Now, I just want to point out that when Roger had the bends, the armor wasn't always bent over screaming and like trying not to explode. Maybe it's because Jeffries is more closely tied due to his powers. Maybe it's because Box is cool as long as you don't try to make sense of it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, Roger, the Hulk punched through Roger in the Box armor, and like Madison had to come over and like patch it over and fix the armor up so that Box could get out. And Box was like psychologically a little bit messed up by that, but he didn't react with physical pain. But again, I'm expecting way more consistency out of this book than apparently Bill Mantlo wants to write the powers, because he is very fast and loose with how these powers work. Kara tries to use her power to take control of Goblin, but her powers don't work on Goblin, so she ends up freezing Mannequin before he can activate his powers, and Goblin slashes him from behind. This little fucker has taken out Alpha Flight in 10 minutes, and all that's left is little Kara Kilgrave, 13 years old, and her powers don't work, just like the cover.
Out in the snow, Vindicator hears Sasquatch howling that she's blind. She uses what functionality she can get out of her suit to make her way over to Sass, climbing on her back to be the eyes of the operation, while Sasquatch is the legs.
That old chestnut. You can tell Sasquatch is in a lot of pain because she doesn't make a joke about her long feminine legs.
This is a more nuanced character than Walt ever was, that's for sure.
I don't think either Walt or Wanda will ever live down getting their ass kicked by an 8-year-old, though.
As Goblin closes in on Kara, she yells,
I want Laura back, now!
And apparently instead of controlling Goblin's mind, Kara is able to share Goblin's mind, so she gets an even more in-depth mind meld that fleshes out Laura's story. And y'all, buckle up.
Susan and Darby Dean were a blissfully happy couple engaged in important work as high-level anti-mutant activists, which I'm sure pays well because, well, the side of evil pays better than the side of good. When they found out Susan was pregnant with twins, cutting-edge testing that had to be specially sought out through anti-mutant contacts showed that one of the twins was a mutant. So Darby and Susan did the only thing they could and underwent experimental radiation treatment to kill the mutant fetus and allow the normal one to grow. Okay, I know that I wrote that, but I don't think they were trying to kill the mutant fetus. I think they were trying to make it not a mutant, or...
No, they were trying to kill it.
Okay, I hate to be the one to point this out, but you don't need experimental radiation stuff to just pick one of the twins, man. This didn't need to happen this way. I'm not sure why they chose this Rube Goldberg mechanism for a fairly routine thing that happens in many places.
I think the amount of unpacking required with this one...
There's a lot here in this one paragraph, man.
Mantlow's doing... I don't know what the fuck Mantlow's doing here.
Let's continue with what he's doing, and we'll unpack it over the course of a couple episodes.
As the treatment commenced, the normal fetus moved in utero to shield the mutant twin from the radiation, which is totally a thing that can be done. The treatment stopped, and 6 months later, one kid was born. Laura, the narration box tells us, autistic, withdrawn from the world. There is no indication of what had happened to the other twin.
Oh, so much to unpack.
Oh my God, that makes this. None of this makes any.
Keep it going. Just keep running, Wile E. Coyote across the cavern, man.
Kara, overcome with sadness and fear, stops running from Goblyn and faces her with tears in her eyes. Goblyn, taken aback by tears as a concept, reaches out and wipes them away from Kara's cheek.
At that exact moment, Alpha Flight bursts through the wall, guns blazing, saying, "The time for talk is past, Kara. That creature almost slaughtered Alpha Flight single-handedly."
Where's the lie?
It's like a mad dog.
Vindicator says, with what I'm assuming is barely concealed glee, and mad dogs have to be destroyed.
And yet she's still a better person than Christy Gnome. Low bar, but, we're mentioning it nonetheless.
Plus, Heather came by those cheekbones naturally.
Oh, dude.
Kara jumps in and takes an EM blast meant for Goblin, who sees that Kara cares about Goblin and isn't terrified of her. And Goblin cries her own tears and the rest of the team backs down. And they all lived happily ever after. And this was the end of the Alpha Flight. Found family. Found family, people. This is what it's all about.
Found family under a murder mommy. We don't do happily ever after around here. Let's prove it in Alpha Flight number 55, titled Identity Crisis! Cover date February 1988. Script by Bill Mantlo, pencils by Jim Lee, inks by Tony DeZanuga, letters by Janice Chong, colors by Bob Sharon, edited by Carl Potts, and Tom DeFalco as Poohbah in Chief. Is that... Are we allowed to say that, Tom?
It's not actually a slur, believe it or not. The term actually originated in Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado.
No fucking way.
And is a combination of two negative statements by political figures, Pooh and Bah. Now, there's certainly more going on there than just that jamming together, but near as I can tell, it isn't actually an explicit reference to any person, title, or idea, which is wild. The Mikado is one of the Gilbert and Sullivan productions I was in as a kid.
Man, parents, apparently... The secret society on Earth is people who grew up doing Gilbert and Sullivan because it is the connective tissue that ties society together. I did not know this as a kid. I did not know that.
We'll drop a link in the show notes. I did a little bit of research to figure this out because once, the Poohbah thing, I looked into it. And there's no documentary evidence of Poohbah existing until that play. And so, again, it's not like those musicals don't have issues, shall we say. But, weird, right? That's a weird one. On the cover, we have a giant-ass box in a fist fight against a giant-ass Tundra, punching all the way through Tundra's shoulder.
It's pretty badass. Heather is flying above Great Beast Karyuk the Corruptor in a proper yellow power signature, thanks to, let's see, the names on the cover are Potts, Lee, and Milgram. I don't know exactly who did what, so thanks, fellas. That covers it. It's a badass box cover.
Great ass.
Oh, Jesus. Box even gets the full-figure corner box art, alongside heads for Heather, Sasquatch, and Kara, and still no Whitman Knapp because he sucks, and is also, coincidentally, the least visually interesting or distinct character in Alpha Flight, which is why, he doesn't actually do much these days. If Marvel 2-in-1 was the thing in Friends, Alpha Flight has become Box in Friends, apparently.
Splash page open of Box's friend Wanda Langowski and Box's special friend, Heather Hudson. Box's special I don't want to know. Wanda is standing in her magical workout wear, holding herself and looking pensive. Around her is a shaded outline of a very angry Sasquatch, along with some heavy-handed narration boxes about Wanda wondering who she is. Heather comes in to check on her, and Wanda says, "I'm just feeling a little strange, Heather, and I don't know why.
We then get 2 full pages of exposition of what's been going on, which actually succinctly sums up the kind of body-swapping mindfuck adventure the character has been on, ending with Wanda saying, "Most people have to wonder whether they're good, bad, competent, incompetent, successful, or failures. I have to worry about whether I'm a man, woman, or beast." She sasses out.
Heather replies, "Wanda, I can't answer the question of who or what you are. All I can offer is
sisterly comfort. There was a time when I'd have hoped for far more from a woman." Ooh. It's nice that we're finally touching on that, because ever since Aurora fled at the sight of Wanda, they haven't addressed the fact that Walt was defined as a cis male, sexually invested creature. That's part of what Walt was with Aurora. And for that to be flipped around and the rug taken out, I can see where that's hard to deal with in a kid's book, especially one written by Bill Mantlo. But I find that to be very interesting, because would Wanda have made an overture at Aurora if Aurora hadn't responded in horror? I'm curious about that, actually, to know how that fits together, and how, if Wanda is feeling differently as Wanda is in her female body more and more, how that goes around, because I'm sure Walt would have some trouble with flipping things around.
We've touched on this a bit, that Wanda seems to be rolling with things in a way that is almost kind of shocking. I mean, it just, the idea that, like, I mean, you're dead. Then you come back in Smart Alec's body, and then you're in the box armor, and then you take over the dead body of your former teammate and friend in Sasquatch form, and then change out of Sasquatch form, and now you're a woman where you had previously been a man. Taking a long hiatus and just working on yourself would seem to be the best thing to do. And I think what's frustrating for me is that there's a lot of really interesting ideas being just sort of put out there, but that's all that's happening with them.
Yeah.
Is they're being put out there and they're not really being investigated, and the character isn't being given the space to investigate.
It almost feels like a lot of it is being left up to us as the reader to catch this sketch and fill in the detail with what we think ought to be there. It's like a writing version of doing the pencils of a story, and then we have to come in and do the inks.
Which in its own way is somewhat fine. I mean, you can do that. It feels like there are decisions being made that we're not privy to. And honestly, it's a fraught topic, and not just for today, but even when this is being written, there's a lot going on that is under discussion here that's kind of being, I can't say that's being used inappropriately at this point, but it definitely isn't being addressed in a way that I'm entirely comfortable with when the lens does turn towards Wanda a bit more. One more quick literary reference, and I may have made it in the past just because it's one of my favorite things, but there is a Basque, he probably would get pissed if he was called Spanish. No, that's not true. He was a bit of a nationalist. Spanish writer Miguel de Unamuno, novelist, philosopher, briefly sided with the nationalists during the Civil War, and then figured out that they were as fascist as they were and decried them in a public speech where he was supposed to be giving his imprimatur to them, and died a few days later. He was older at that point anyways.
Wanted it.
Probably. But he wrote novels as well as philosophical tracts. And one of his novels, I believe it's called Mist. The character is doing some really terrible shit that the character doesn't love. And one of the chapters ends with the character knocking on a door, and Unamuno opens the door. And he inserts himself, and the next chapter is the character arguing with his creator about why am I doing these things? I don't want to be this guy. What is this? And Unamuno's response is, dude, you're my character. You're going to do what the fuck I say. And that's how it goes. And there's a way in which at times, and that's funny. That's interesting. And Unamuno is playing with something very specific in so doing. But there are times when it feels like that's kind of how Mantlo treats the characters, the same way that he treats the powers of Box and frankly other characters, that it's what I need you to do in this moment. So that's what it's going to be. And that I chafe against that.
I think that it is past time for us to be talking about Wanda and identity crisis and whatnot. I mean, for a while there, literally every time Walt had to go take a pee, he had to figure out how that worked in this body. That alone would be an incredibly traumatic thing to wake up in a body and realize you had to pee with Hulk's dick. And then the next time you had to figure out where the valve drain on the box armor was. And then the next time you're dealing with a completely different set of plumbing. And who knows what Smart Alec had going on, you know?
I feel like he's probably smooth.
Big Prince Albert. Imagine that. Something like that. You go into pee because you're like, look, this body is telling me it has to pee. And you pull it out and you're like, what the? I've got to get me a new body.
Suffice to say, Wanda Lankowski is having a rough go of it. Doing really well within that context. I would suggest that it's Bill Mantlo that's kind of letting us down here.
You know, I think both she and Heather would be doing much worse if everything had fallen apart and they just went back and like were working at the beginning of Alpha Flight Volume 2. Like Heather's working at a florist shop and not doing well because like you can't go from that type of high pressure PTSD inducing environment. And then when you take that pressure away, that's when the problems happen because your brain is rewiring to live in this pressure. And when you take it away, that's when everything falls apart. So you got to stick with the team.
I think that's an interesting point about staying within the context. The fact that Wanda is still a superhero when she has the time to be self-reflective, to really kind of interrogate what's happened, almost immediately all hell breaks loose. So there's no time to really follow it to its conclusion. And that's fine. That's fine. It's just... I find Wanda as a character really engaging and interesting in a way that I just didn't Walt for all sorts of reasons. And I kind of want more time with Wanda as Wanda. And we're not really getting that yet. And I don't know, hopefully more soon. The rest of Alpha and Beta flights are continuing to make Bedlam's brain blasted base habitable for the long haul, including a system that sucks fish out of the sea to be automatically processed into TV dinners, which is so specific and so 80s.
And every meal would be exactly the same, apparently. It's like, hey, this is it. This is what we eat here. It's like waking up in the Matrix and they get the gruel, but it tastes like fish. They can apparently survive from protein, plankton, grass from the sea. Tom, do you get that joke?
Oh, yeah.
For those of you who don't, that is a line uttered by the robot named Box that is in the movie Logan's Run, which is delightful and not at the same time.
Yeah, Logan's Run feels a little too true to life, shall we say.
If it weren't for the sex club scenes and the titties, it's a great sci-fi story for like, about 11, 12 years old, where their mental society is essentially 11, 12 years old, and then you get a few more years of hormone-fueled insanity, and then they kill you. That mindset of a child and learning, they don't know what a mother is. They don't know what a father is. Like, it's actually, I showed it, and I forgot about those scenes. I did it with my older kids when they were younger. They appreciated the story for what it was and were riding the story all the way through. They just didn't appreciate the scenes that I appreciated, that I had totally mind wiped from it. So anyway, folks, go if you have a classic movie night, make sure you check out Logan's Run, though we guess most of you have seen it in theaters. Kara is still trying to reach out to Laura Dean and find out more about how her powers work and what this live world, dead world is all about. Kara uses her power to mind meld with Laura, which she did before, but this is totally new, and I don't think she does it with other people later. It isn't part of her power set moving forward. She learns that our world is dead world because it sucks and is scary.
Where's the lie?
Wherever the other sister goes when not here is Live World, a fantastical place Kara describes as
worlds inside of you, Laura.
Goblyn chases Kara out of Laura's mind because I don't think Bill actually knows how these powers work yet.
Or doesn't care. Powers serve the story, not the other way around, at least in Mantlow's world. Sasquatch has left the compound to go brood outside and finds herself slamming around ice and snow, making some weird barren area while grumbling about identity, when suddenly up springs Tundra, and Soman the Artificer, and Karyuk the Corruptor, and Talamak the Fire Beast. The Great Beast Gang is back, baby! And once again, preying on the Sasquatch form linked to a Lankowski to gain a foothold on Earth to ruin it like they ruined their own planet.
Showing remarkable character growth, Sasquatch not only rejects their offer to go evil Great Beast, but also refrains from picking a fight with them. Man, Walt would have absolutely thrown hands at the first great beast that was within reach.
The fight comes nonetheless as Sasquatch is slapped through the wall of the compound, which is promptly ripped open like a bag of chips by the great beasts. So much for their new home. Heather quickly uses her EM fields to navigate Telemach's fire form into an ice wall, extinguishing him from the battle, as well as trapping Karyuk under the ice, the only way to defeat him. Pretty damn good thinking, I'll give her that. Snowbird pulled a similar trick, but she was a goddess. No one else on Alpha Flight has soloed a great beast, much less two at once. Heather does mention that she got the idea because she remembered what Shaman said about ice being the antidote to the Corruptor. And man, I miss Shaman.
Me too. But before it passes, I do want to say Heather does it 2 at a time.
This impresses Jeffries so much.
Oh, yes, it does impress Jeffries, my friend.
He jumps into his armor and begins fist-fighting Tundra, which he loses like Walt throwing hands at the Hulk. So, Box turns to the ruined base, absorbs its mass, and goes back for round 2 on an equal size with Tundra.
In the chaos, Kara and Laura appear to be stepped on by Tundra, only for Goblyn to emerge from beneath, pissed off and clawing at Tundra. Looks like Kara gets to see Live World after all.
The rest of our heroes scurry into a doorway in Box's foot and make their way to his head. After being a transformer and a dinosaur, Box is now a Gundam.
And we're ready for round 2! Round 2 goes the same as round 1. Sasquatch helpfully points out, Box, Tundra may be big, but most of his mass is made up of ice and snow. A blast of incredible heat could melt him.
So Box takes some of his mass and converts it into energy and explodes, leaving a giant crater behind.
Oh god, has Box been converting mass into energy to fuel the armor this whole time? Can he do that? Does he know how to conceive of a safe nuclear reactor? Is this just like a radioactive crater, like just the world's dirtiest bomb that just went off in the Arctic? What? Mantlo thread.
It's like they really, really want to prove Gary Cody right despite their best intentions.
And finally, we come to Alpha Flight number 56, titled, Have You Ever Heard a Spaceship Scream? ? Warped! ! That's the official Comic Vine title, folks, not just the warped ! I'm now singing that, like, in the title of the Bryan Adams classic, Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman? And I hate it. Same creative team as last issue. Been a while since we said that, huh?
On the cover, Sasquatch and Vindicator face off against a horde of robot-looking alien heads. That's alien with a capital A. They look like just the head with some much smaller limbs.
It's fine. Again, with the muted colors, Sasquatch is done in purple-pink highlights, and the silver-blue robots and the gray-blue background. It's a noticeable shift in the last 12 issues. A couple pops of color on covers, but mostly this pink-purple muted look. Splash page open to a spaceship version of the box jet configuration hurtling through space with a rainbow warp effect around it. We'll wrap back around to the Star Trek of it all at the end of the issue. Why is Alpha Flight in space, inside a ship we have never seen before? Well, they were following Tim Curry's advice in the classic video game Command & Conquer Red Alert 3. Tom, have you seen that clip?
Possibly. I need to double check, but...
Click it. I'm curious about your response now because it's funny. Dear. He's playing, I believe it's Stalin. Or whoever took over after Stalin, I think. It's been a while. I think I pretty much stopped with Red Alert 2.
What in the actual fuck was that? All right, that link will also be in the show notes. It'll take you to a Reddit video. Jesus. You know, y'all, I've been quiet for a minute, and Chris didn't know why he kept having these bits to keep reading. And it's simply because this disjointed jumping around had me almost ready to abandon ship. As we said at the start of this episode, are we speedrunning genres now? This shift is like nonsensical. And I actually wondered if I was missing an issue in between. It just, and their explanation doesn't work. Anyway, as Box performed the most ill-advised nuclear test ever in all of human history, and my God, is that a statement. He also performed a JMH-style calculation to somehow, between issues, figure out a way to reconfigure his technology to save his life at the last moment, despite it looking to everyone else like certain death.
And now he is a spaceship hurtling through space at warp speed and screaming the whole time, which I think is actually a nice touch. It seems all this has taken a bit of a toll on Madison's brain, which wasn't actually great to begin with. And now it is a literal giant brain made out of metal that controls the ship, because Box is really cool until you start doing stuff like this and poking around about how it works.
Not to blah, blah, blah this issue away, but it is a pretty simple story. Vindicator, Sasquatch, Goblin, and Mannequin get oriented inside the Box ship and discover the creatures from the cover which attack them. Sasquatch deduces they were something Bedlam made and were in the base when Box absorbed it and are now acting like an evil immune system or something. And there's a big cancerous mass on Box's big metal brain. Mannequin and Goblin get there first, and Goblin starts slashing away at the Bedlamites, Sass's term for them, and it's not at all a bad one. And damaging Box's brain because, well, she's called Goblin. She ain't exactly a precision tool.
Despite being the one who decided to bring Goblin into Beta Flight, Heather is regretting the decision and is quick to badmouth Goblin at every turn. So much so that when Mannequin points out Box is being injured, Vindicator immediately takes aim at Goblin and says,
"Then she's got to be stopped." 0 to murder in no time flat. Might be a record for Heather, and that's saying something. Mannequin stops her only by pointing out that Kara and Laura are apparently inside Goblin, so Vindicator can't kill her. Yet.
Give it time, Heather. You've already marked the next teammate/family member you're going to kill. Savor the build-up. Let it age like a fine wine.
Goblin is pretty hard to like, I guess, but they're all really mean about it. Is this intentionally written? To be hard to like and showing that dynamic from a sympathetic perspective, we've been told Laura is autistic, and the way autism is treated in 1988 isn't exactly accurate.
For example, see the movie The Boy Who Could Fly, released in 1986, one of the many, many weird movies my dad copied wholesale from the video rental club in 1987.
Not that this is something we want to get into, but autism as a thing is a constantly evolving spectrum in our understanding of it. But that aside, Laura, who is supposedly cut off from the world and thus autistic, is pretty fucking chatty with Kara. I guess superpowers, autism is more of a story convenience than something that has to make sense. For fuck's sake. This issue, the other two issues, I was rolling. This issue almost this is when the text came in, my friend. This is the issue that almost broke me.
So Heather blasts the remaining Bedlamites away, and then in a very tense scene, blasts away the big mass on the brain, restoring Madison's mind and saving them all. Throughout the issue, Mannequin talks about this mission as a surgery on a machine and reminds us all he's a doctor and way too old to be simping for a 13-year-old girl.
Heather is the big damn hero of this issue. She coordinates everything, executes the final maneuver, and only considers killing one of the people on her side. She is nailing this girl boss thing.
She also didn't question her role or abilities. She threw herself into the situation and just did it.
It's kind of upsetting that the only thing holding her back from murder is self-doubt. Meanwhile, inside of Goblin, Kara learns about this live world place from Laura, who says it's a great place where nothing ever tries to hurt her, followed by a panel of something observing Laura inside a magic Christmas ornament. The person isn't fully visible, but seems to have white skin, fully blue eyeballs without any other features, and green hair. God.
Yeah, clearly, this is the next thing to happen to Alpha Flight. You should hear the capital letters there. And boy, will this character be around for a while. The team heads up to the bridge of the ship, where Box has created a captain's chair for Heather that is him. It's his head on top of the chair back. As Heather sits on his lap, I guess, he says, "Now maybe we can discuss your bedside manner, Doc." And Heather replies,
I hate that we have to go back.
I was just thinking that. We specifically chose the voices because we knew that they would have to interact. I forgot how they interacted, Tom.
I hate this podcast. Discussion is not what I had in mind. Exclamation point.
That's my new ringtone. And then she makes out with the box head on the chair. It gets people. It's a weirdly drawn panel, and it looks like Madison has a human face that she was making out with on this, and Sasquatch and Beta Flight are just watching. I need an adult, Tom.
Not yet. I was going to point out, because it was in the script, that the rest of the team is there as this is happening. But then Heather says, "Yuck, you taste like motor oil, and now you need an adult."
Oh, God. This just validates my long-standing take on Madison Jeffries' romantic abnormalities.
And folks, if you want to subject yourself to that and haven't yet, it's on the Patreon. And I had to hear it and edit it. And hell, misery loves company.
I'll give you one for free. When he changes his oil, he licks his fingers clean. Once Heather regains control of herself... Once Heather regains control of herself, the team sets a course for Earth, and Heather, doing her best William Shatner pose in the chair, says, "Then on my command, warp." And we get the rainbow warp effect again as we warp into a new genre, Tom. Bit of context and rabbit hole here. Star Trek 4 was released in 1986 and 5 will be released in 1989. And I remember going to that movie because I liked Star Trek The Next Generation and it was a Star Trek movie and I had no clue who the fuck these people were or what the fuck was going on because the fifth, not a great movie. There's something about the rainbow warp effect that they use in this book that yells Star Trek to me and I couldn't figure out why. Star Wars uses the white-blue lights of the stars going all zoomy into lines, and Star Trek spices that up with some blue and red, but that comes from the warp nacelle lighting, not from the warp effect itself. Poking around the imagery, I think that this most looks like is the poster for the first movie, Star Trek the Motion Picture, or just TMP if you're into the whole brevity thing. That is what this warp effect looks like to me, and I'm not sure if it's intentional or not. I don't know if Lee is a Trek fan or not. Either way, he seems to have used the poster or the VHS cover for TMP as the inspiration.
Fun fact, the 2016 movie Star Trek Beyond, the last Chris Pine one. I didn't see this one. I like the first one. I was fine with the second one.
It's so much better. What? Oh, Fred.
I was fine with it.
We'll talk later. We'll talk later. This is long enough already.
Anyway.
It's better than that one.
Star Trek Beyond uses similar motif on its poster. Less rainbow, more Starfleet colors, but clearly referencing TMP and failing to make use of it largely by muting the colors.
I want more colors in my entertainment properties, damn it.
So some final thoughts.
Yeah, let's skip to the final thoughts, Tom.
I didn't love Hugh Haynes' work in the first issue covered today. It was fine, but honestly, Lee's art felt far more coherent to me. It felt more in line with what we'd seen to date. There was just some, frankly, the Haynes artwork just felt like fill-in art, which makes no sense because it's part of an arc. But here we are.
I think what you're talking about with Lee, that's what he does really well, is that he draws it well enough that you don't particularly care how well written the book is because it's still easy to look at. It's fun to look at. There's stuff to look at, and it's done well. And that is what Jim Lee's superpower really is that he can take a boring script and make it look good so that you don't notice how boring or weird or disjointed or how little anything makes sense until, the second time you read it. That's, of all the superpowers to have, that's actually not a bad superpower,
Not at all.
I think that Goblin's backstory, there's the abortion angle, there's the eugenics angle. Which should we tackle first? They both sound so fun. Or do you want to belay that one for a future?
Well, that's my question to you: is there more digging into Goblin that's going to take place in the next episode? Because I think
it more fleshes out how the powers work, and then the threat from Live World comes here, and so this is the origin moment here. Yeah.
Then I guess let's dispose of this now. It was a wild thing to introduce into this.
In 2 pages. In a 2-page flashback.
Bringing in the anti-mutant component to it, bringing in the idea of aborting the fetus because it's not what you want. I mean...
Well, okay, that's going to keep coming up here as the story moves forward, though, is that the girls and the narration will both frequently refer to the fact that their parents tried to murder one of them, and they remember this and they bear a grudge. And I am confused about so much of this stuff that I wonder what in the world it could possibly have been intended to be.
I'm in full agreement on that. There is so much going on with this backstory, and we've already touched on how little Mantlo is delving into Wanda's situation that I don't trust that it's going to be handled well, but I also don't know why the fuck you're doing it this way. There's also this suggestion that she presents as autistic because of her movement between worlds and because of what was done. There is so much that is funky about this that you layer that on top of the Nap Kara Kilgrave situation, and what the fuck is going on with Mantlo right now? Like, what is he doing?
Is everything okay at home, Bill?
It's really strange, man. Like, it feels like he's throwing the kitchen sink of issues at this book, but then not doing anything with it. And I don't.
You just have a pile of sinks. You don't have a house.
Really, it's really strange, and it's strange enough that I'm at this moment not even angry about it. I'm just I'm curious and confused about what is the point of creating these characters, deploying them the way he is, and putting them into the situations he's putting them into without any other kind of commentary, which doesn't necessarily jibe with what we know about Mantlo's political beliefs, the work he's done in the past. His creation of Dagger and Cloak was to explicitly address some topics, right? What he did with Hulk.
Cloak and Dagger also has some stuff going on too, friend.
Well, there's a lot of that too. But even when he was doing it in Hulk.
Oh yeah, the child abuse part of it all?
That at least felt like he was trying to explore something. This again feels like spaghetti in the wall. And maybe it's because you've said that we're getting close to the end of his run, and the end of his run somewhat coincides, if I remember correctly, with the end of his time at Marvel, and he's basically out of the industry not long after that. So maybe he's just throwing stuff up, and that's it. But like, wow. A lot of this is just wow.
For as weird and button pushing in ways that you don't expect as Goblin's backstory is, I did think I could see how this story, relatively intact, instead of being 2 pages of flashback in Alpha Flight, if this had been spread across 6 issues of X Factor investigations with Madrox, and like if Goblin were to appear, and if there were there would have been murders, that's how X Factor investigations would have been. But then there's this mysterious Laura Dean around, and they realize that she's the daughter of these famous anti-mutant activists. And then in unwrapping this mystery, you come to find out this horrible, tragic backstory, and that's the case. I could see that working really well there. So it's not that the story is inherently the problem or the elements here. Is this an anti-abortion thing? Is this a anti-mutant thing? Does Bill know what autism is? Like, instead of thinking about all that stuff, it's just written poorly.
Yeah, it's odd in a way that I can't nail down what's going on here or why he's doing it. And the fact that I'm even being forced to ask that question is a problem with the writing. And that's just the reality of the situation.
We've talked a lot about these issues, haven't we, Tom? And I think that we have said everything that we want to say about them. And we want to take this series seriously. And I want to end this on a really high note, as high as I can end it. But I appreciate that the characters are moving forward, that Heather's self-doubt is moving back. We are making progress on that. We're starting to see more of Wanda. Even Jeffries, we've talked about coming into his own, and all this creativity and all these changes in not just what he's doing, but what he is, because he's like now a robot type thing. There's a lot of stuff to go forward on this. It's just, I think, here's my charitable way of saying this, Tom. I think the introduction of Beta Flight has served the book poorly.
That's interesting. I actually think that I don't like some of the subplots, but having those other characters rounds the book off in a way.
I think the idea could. Do you think that Beta Flight has been an addition to the book at this time? Because remember, 1/3 of that is Whitman Knapp, who brings nothing to this book other than
what he
charges.
brings is bodies. One of the things that the 3-person Alpha Flight has going against it, and as we've discussed, is there just aren't enough bodies to go around to deal with threats. So what Whitman brings to the party is 3 extra fighters, essentially, to the ranks, and a character who is, outside of those 3 fighters, weak. So, I mean, I think.
Well, but he's the medical knowledge that presumably the team would have, but they don't actually use. So you know what? There's our high point, Tom. We're going to take our win, and we're going to GTFO. We said something nice about Whitman Knapp and what he brings to the book. I can think of no finer praise that we can bring to Alpha Flight than that Whitman Knapp didn't completely suck.
I don't know how I feel about it, but we can off-ramp there.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight is brought to you by listeners like you who subscribe to our Patreon, and by the Roxxon Energy Corporation, parent corporation of the Excelsior Embroidery Company, turning thread into thunder where every piece is stitched with style, sarcasm, and just a dash of superhuman flair. This week, we're featuring a patch of Prince Namor's trident. I've added this to my personal battle vest on the right-hand side, just above the Mjolnir patch, and I have a cap shield on the left side, because you know I got that thing on me. You can see these and 200 more designs at excelsiorembroidery.etsy.com, where listeners of Why Not can use the coupon code WN503 to get 50% off when you order any 3 items from the Etsy store. When company's coming over, bring out the good towels. Excelsior.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Chris and Tom is recorded in Chicago, Illinois, and deep beneath stately Baker Manor in a fashionable neighborhood outside St. Louis. It is written by Chris Baker, edited by Tom Flynn, that's me, with voice work by my age-appropriate daughter and additional cat noises courtesy of Teeny the Chonky Calico. Our theme song is O Canada by Five Iron Frenzy. New episodes are released every other Monday at www.thewhynotpod.com and wherever you get your podcasts, where ratings and reviews are always welcome as a way to help our community grow. And we love hearing from our community. You can reach us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and by email at whynotapod@gmail.com. That's whynotehpod@gmail.com.
Join us next time as we catch up with what Marina has been doing over in Avengers.
And you know what that means, folks.
5 penny turkeys.
And we find out how them Alpha Flight folks wriggle themselves out of this jam. And Tom, there's a lot more Goblin.
Yeah.